Did you know that 90% of the world's millionaires invest in real estate? Well, I'm Angel with the Academy Presents Real Estate Investing Rocks, and I'm here to help you if you want to go for your piece of that pie. Hey guys, it's Angel with the Academy Presents Real Estate Investing Rocks, and today we have Justin Nelson, and he is like the VA king, but he has a really unique start. And he and I were talking about it just a bit, but he started out like in the real estate space at 15. So even though he looks like a baby, he has got like some serious experience and does not sound like his age. So Justin, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. So, I'll kind of keep it short and sweet today, but my background started at 16 years old. I started off as an inside sales agent for a real estate team out of the Denver, Northern Colorado market. I had the pleasure to do everything that every real estate agent or even investors for that matter don't want to do, right? The cold calling. There's a million ways to do every business, but when it came to ours, we were doing cold calling, internet leads, buying data to go after different things. And that was kind of my job. I was in charge of everything, how we got the data, how we filtered the data, how we called the data. And when it came to calling, that just happened to be me. At the time, before I got my start in real estate investing later on, we were mostly residential resale. So we were doing a lot of the same, principles, and did that for a few years. Got the opportunity to go play college football, go study mechanical engineering. But at the same time, I got licensed I think I was 19. I just turned 19 years old. Got licensed, ended up selling right around $12 million in real estate in my first year. Did that again my second year, and then kind of got put in charge of the team, where for the next year I led the team from, I think we were 3 agents at the time, to about an organization of 15 to 20. Opened a few expansion locations within the Colorado area. And then that led me to consulting. It led me to going on the road, teaching about 300 days a year on the road. I'd hit about 100 to 135 cities per year. Just speaking on all topics, social media, lead generation, finding the next deal. And then that kind of evolved into a lot of people going, "Hey, Justin, how are you running these big companies while you live on the road 300 days a year? Like, you're teaching all day. Like, how's everything working if you're literally teaching all day?" And my secret was virtual assistants. And so I started to share with other people how we were using virtual assistants from the Philippines specifically. And then that kind of started off as, "Hey, Justin, can we use your virtual assistant? Hey, can we use your virtual assistant?" And then I was like, wait, not everybody can use my virtual assistant, even though I had a few at the time. So we started to help people with our organization. I'd go, "Hey, let me just go find you one. Hey, let me go find you one." And then it started to turn into, hey, 10 to 15, residential resale agents were coming to us a month going, "Hey, we heard you could do this." And then, we started to get into the investor side, and they're like, "Hey, we heard you could do this." And this, the word just started to spread. And so that's where about 90% of my focus is now, is on the virtual assistant leverage side. My passion is really tied to helping people not have a job. A lot of us think we're business owners, but we still have a job because we really can't remove ourselves. And, you shouldn't judge yourself for that if you're still in that place, because it's always an upward thing we're working towards, but you can get there a lot faster when you put leverage into place. So obviously COVID took my 300 days a year on the road travel schedule right down to about 1.2 days a year. So with that being said, 90+% of my time now is focused on the virtual assistant space. So, and I am a ripe old age of 23 now.
You are oh my God, you're such a baby. And to just have that experience, and honestly, so a lot of people in the space got a late start.
Yeah.
So
it's a second career.
Yeah, you are more experienced than, I would say, over half of the people in the space, because it is a second. So we discussed a little bit, one of my main focuses is helping people get that wiggle room, because like Andy Frisella says, when you take the financial component out of it, you make better decisions. And to get people some of that wiggle room, to not have to worry about, I got to have this paycheck to pay my bills, you start to do your job way better. Because
Absolutely.
as an educator, I am a totally different educator, knowing that it's not the paycheck that pays my bills,
Hmm.
than I would be, or than I was
Yeah.
when I had to rely on that paycheck. So it's just totally different. And to be able to free up your time, holy night. So you get the wiggle room and you get your time. That's a massive combination. That's awesome. And yeah, I just can't even I don't have a VA. I wish I had a VA. Because
Yeah.
the idea of being able to put the business on autopilot
Hmm.
and get some time, that's really awesome.
Absolutely. No, it almost became an addiction for me because I was like, wait, my first VA, I mean, she came in and started a $250,000 company on her own during the first year with me. And I was paying her $5 an hour, $4 an hour. So $640 a month. I had someone fully running a $250,000 company. And that's kind of where all my limiting beliefs were shattered. Like, I was like, whoa, like, I thought you were just going to come in and do some paperwork or some database management or, do my calendar. But when we realized, wait, the talent exists to do whatever you want to do, that's really when the addiction started to how much can I leverage every piece of my life out?
Wow. So like you sound like the 4 Hour Work Week. I don't know if you have you read that?
I have. And it's a funny story. I actually read that when I would have been roughly probably 19. I read that. I didn't have any VAs at the time. And what's interesting is if you've never read it, you read it totally differently when you have a VA versus when you don't. Because when you first read the book, you're shocked. You're like, oh, this is cool. Like this guy's talking about leverage and making a business where he works 4 hours a week. But when you actually pull a VA onto your staff and you have one now, and then you reread the book, you see it in a completely different light. It's actually funny. Anybody that ever comes to me and uses our services to get a VA, our opening gift to them is actually the 4 Hour Work Week. That's actually what we send them in the mail as an opening gift because we want them to read it and understand how to leverage to that degree.
Wow. So why do you send it in the mail?
Yeah, so we send it in the mail for number one, just to stand out. Because number one, if you send it digitally, it can get put in their Gmail. It can be sit there. At least when I send it in the mail, it kind of feels really old fashioned. Like, oh man, this gift arrived to me. Now we send it via Amazon, and my VAs do it. They log into my Amazon account and send it off. But we love the mail because I know they got it and they can't tell me, oh, it went to my spam box, or I didn't get it, or I don't have Audible, or whatever the excuses may be of a typical consumer.
And no, I will say my preference is to read a
Mhm.
book that I can turn the pages.
Yeah.
Um, I don't like to read digitally.
Mhm.
I'm just, and part of that's my age. I don't look at or active, but I'm 43. So,
Mhm.
but I like to have a book in my hand. I feel more like I'm reading. Whereas if I'm on the computer or if I'm on an iPad, it
Mhm.
doesn't feel like reading the same way.
Yep, I
And
agree.
I asked you because I've heard other people say that they send it through the mail. They send a book or they send something through the mail because again, it makes them stand out because
Yep.
so many people send everything digitally these days.
Yep.
But I think part of it too is just who your audience is and
Mhm.
who you're appealing to. And like I said, I mean, for me, it's probably an age thing. I grew up reading books.
Yep.
My daughters and my son are growing up on computers and iPads. And so for them, a digital document is probably
Mhm.
going to be much more well received than it would be to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's our target market. I mean, there's not a whole bunch of 20-year-olds out there looking for VAs to leverage their business, right? I
No,
mean,
just
and even
you.
in your, yeah, no, and usually in your early 30s, you might not have kids yet. Maybe your kids are young enough where you're like, I don't want to add a VA into my life yet. But, as you kind of get to your kids' teen ages, when you're late 30s, mid 30s, or your early 40s, that's when you really start to, unfortunately start to realize for a lot of people, wow, time's running out before my kids get out of the house, or all these different things. So that's kind of our target market. Is our average consumer is about 35 to 45 average, right? We have people I got someone that's 75 using our VAs and someone that's 19. But you're exactly right. I mean, and kind of like on the investing side, what I'm realizing now in the market I'm in, because I live in Nashville now, I'm not even in Denver anymore, is when it comes to the investing side, is like a lot of people are like, oh, mailers are dead, right? Or, hey, this is dead. And for me, I actually realized, like, if I can send a mailer to a certain demographic or generation and then do it digitally on the other side, like it makes a world of difference, because someone that's 80 or 90 years old, you can say that text messaging is the new way to find deals. But if they don't even have a cell phone, or even if they get it, they don't feel comfortable responding back to it, the mail is going to work a lot better. So
Yeah. So my grandfather, he passed away a few years ago, but he would call like the magazines you get that you can order gifts out of. He would
yep.
call them, get the address, send them a check,
Yeah,
and order his stuff that way, because that was how he felt comfortable. And as he
absolutely.
got older and my grandmother passed away, my husband and I were like, Grandpa, you have got to get a property manager. And
Yeah.
that was like a foreign concept to him. And
Mm-hmm.
so we found him a manager, and then he didn't understand that the manager was also a real estate agent
Yeah.
and could buy and sell properties for him, because he didn't understand that they were one and the same.
Yeah.
And it's just because he didn't grow up in that time period. He didn't know a whole lot about how managers worked for properties. And I don't know how long property managers have been a thing for
Yeah.
smaller real estate investors,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a game changer for us, and it
Yeah.
changed life for him too once he finally got one. But it's
Yeah.
appealing to like across generations is
Mm-hmm.
tough. So
Yeah.
hearing you talk about, sending it digitally to this group or sending it hard copy to another group, that's a big idea. And to be able to do that successfully is huge.
100%. That goes for any business you're in. It kind of goes the same with, like, I know you put out a lot of free content. I do a lot of free content. Like, we use YouTube. Like, YouTube is for a very certain demographic, or a Facebook group is for another demographic. Like, to be honest with you, I don't touch Instagram. Like, a lot of people are like, why aren't you on Instagram? You're 23. And I'm like, well, yes, I'm 23. And I would do great on Instagram if I was trying to relate to other people my age, but that's not who my demographic is, of who I'm going to sell product to, or services, or, be able to give education to, at a high level. And so I think it's all about, narrowing in where is your focus, and where do you need to be spending your time at.
So did you use a coach to help you narrow down to your demographic, or did you just like come upon it? Because those are narrowing in on your demographic and realizing this is my niche down, this is where I'm going to focus. That's tough. And you're
Yeah.
so young.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, I ran into it. So whenever I got consulting gigs on the road, I would walk into a room, and really fast, I realized a few things. 80% of the room, when I was talking to real estate agents, was always female. 80% was female, 20% male. That was the demographic of my audience. And the average age was about 35 to 42. That was kind of the demographic age. And so when who I was speaking to every day, and I was giving them leaps and bounds of success in their business, I was like, all right, this is the demographic, right? I think I could have focused on other demographics and done well, but to be honest with you, I just walked right into it. And when I started to realize, hey, I'd go to New York, and then Florida, and then LA, and it was still the same demographic in every single room, I realized, okay, the persona I put out, the advertising we put out, that's who I attract, is, on average, a 35 to 42-year-old female. And that's just because the real estate, especially the real estate agent game, was, more predominantly female in that sense. That was really became our target market of who we did most of our business with.
Wow. And honestly, I think that females on the whole,
Mm-hmm.
we believe that we can just get it done.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
how did you break that like idea? How did you get females to give up that control? Because we just do
Yeah.
it. We will
Yeah.
kill ourselves, but we will just do it.
Yeah, for me, it's always finding, like, so I'm not a big person that believes in the big why or things like that. Like, it kind of will sometimes bog me down. But I found that, everybody's got a motivation behind what they're doing, right? And it's different for everybody. It could be financials, and there's nothing wrong with that. It could be kids, it could be a spouse, it could be a million different things. And so until you can convince someone, and I don't think I can ever convince anybody, but until I can show them enough times that leveraging will give them more pleasure than pain, then they're never going to make a change, right? If someone's living comfortably and they're like, all right, I love life, I'm good to go, Of course, they probably don't need leverage in their business, right? They're good, they're satisfied. But usually when you mix someone that's looking to exponentially grow income or, grow the amount of real estate investing they're doing, that usually subsequently means more time, right? Because people want to have more success faster. And when you shorten the amount of time that you want success in, that increases the amount of time you have to put into a business. Now, if you're okay waiting for success for 40 years and just kind of having a gradual graph, I don't think you need leverage, right? Because if you, like, I kind of give the example, if I buy one home a year, every year until I'm 40, I'll have 20 homes by that time. I won't really need to work a whole lot. I can take equity out of homes and buy another one, but I want 20 homes in the next 3 years, right? And so that increases the amount of time and income I have to make. And so that's who I would really work on is, hey, for you guys to get massive goals and it's going to take a ton of time and effort and it's going to take away from your family or it's going to make family life stressful or it's going to take whatever a toll it is, let's put leverage in there so you can feel like you didn't even spend more time. And so that's really who we narrowed in on. And we also didn't care to help those that didn't want helped, right? We have people that go to me and go, Justin, try to fix me, but I never want anybody to help me, but give me a VA anyways. It's just not work. You have to be open to the idea of giving things off. And if you're not, that's okay. We'll come back to you in a few years when you've burned out and you're like, all right, you were right.
Yeah. And like we talked about it a little bit before we started recording too. You talked a little bit about burnout. And I think that, well, as a female, I know for sure that I hit burnout and I start just like unloading on people. And so it was like, for us, it was getting nannies and getting someone to help clean the house. And because I was done. And part of that was having a special needs child that,
of course,
it just, it made me see the special needs community and the elderly community in a whole different light, because those are the people in our society that need the most help. And Absolutely. They are the least able to do it for themselves.
Yep.
And so that was when I realized, number one, you have to help others. Yep. But number two, I couldn't do it all on my own. Yeah. And so that was when I became open to having people help me and really understanding and being okay with the fact that people do it differently than I do it.
Yep.
And it doesn't make their way wrong. It's just different than how I would do it. It still gets done.
Absolutely.
But getting there took a big experience. I mean, it took having our son. And so I'm wondering, like, I guess people that come to you have already had that moment.
Yeah, they've either had that moment or they know they're going to have the moment, or they're super forward thinking and, for whatever reason, someone, hey, you need to do this, or you need to do that. I think a lot of people too, they don't realize how inexpensive help can be. Like, so we really serve two main niches. We either serve super, super high producers that are looking to, maximize their profit, that are like, Justin, I understand VA. It's kind of like corporate America. Hey, we're trying to maximize our profits, so we're going to offshore some of these tasks. But really a majority of our market that we help are people, because people are like, hey, Justin, when you use VAs from the Philippines, are you taking away American jobs? And what's actually really interesting is our demographic of who we normally help are people that can't afford a full-time assistant or not ready for that in their business. So it's kind of an all or nothing. If they didn't know about VAs or the opportunity it presents, they would just keep on the struggle bus, as we call it. Like, they'd stay on the struggle bus and just keep on grinding through, right? Nothing wrong with that. But when they realize, wait, I can get an assistant for $4 an hour. Like, if you can do the math, like $4 an hour times a full-time worker for the entire month is only $640 for a full-time employee. And so, like, I run a podcast as well. And so I started to realize all these things that my VA could do for me. I was like, okay, so the VA is going to do my podcast editing. My VA is going to do all of my social media. My VA is going to do all of, like, my VAs pay all my bills on my house. My VAs manage my cleaners. They manage my properties now. They are my property manager. And so when I realized that I could put all this on a $640 a month person and that they could handle it, then my life changed, because then it was not just one. How many can I replicate? So you're absolutely right. Some people come to us in burnout and some go, that's my goal, is to help get there before they hit burnout, right? To go, hey, that you have the margins. I mean, anybody probably making more than, or netting more than 50 to 75,000 a year can probably afford $640 a month for a full-time assistant.
Wow. And so the other thing I've heard is people are like, well, isn't that kind of like slave labor? Like, why would
Yeah.
you pay them so little? But
Hmm.
I mean, I'm an economist, and I
Yeah.
know that a dollar here is not a dollar other places,
Yeah.
and that a dollar goes much further in other places. It doesn't go as far in some places,
Yeah.
but I've heard several perspectives about using people from the Philippines,
Hmm.
because number one, I've heard that the culture is just so much different,
It is.
and it is very much a people pleasing culture,
It is. Yeah.
and so they are helpers by nature.
It is. And I kind of say it like this. It's like any business, right? Like, could I go over to the Philippines and try to get someone to work for me at 50 cents an hour and probably find someone and trick them into it? Absolutely. Now, that's where the line is drawn between an ethical business and an unethical business, right? And so kind of, I'm not an economist by any means, but we've done a ton of research over time to go, what is an equivalency salary? And so, when someone works for, their average like engineer and professors, different things like that, like a teacher over there makes like $1.50 an hour.
Oh, shut up.
And, yeah. And so
Wow.
$1.50 an hour is a teacher, that's store managers, different things like that. And so like, and what's even crazier is the reason why real estate goes to the Philippines is because of their education levels and their ability to speak English with little gap. When you call somewhere like, you call a big corporation and you get India on the phone and you can't understand someone from India because of the thick accent. The reason why those go to India is because they even have a cheaper cost per hour than $1.50. Like you can go even lower and still. And so, but for us, we realized was, okay, $2.50 an hour is equivalent to about a $30,000 a year salary in the United States. So when you think about what can someone afford on $30,000 a year in the United States, a lot of people live on that, right? And so it might be a little bit more paycheck to paycheck. It's going to depend, are they a single mom or dad compared to, do they have a spouse that's making the same amount of money? Because if they got two people making that, that's $60,000 a year equivalency. They can survive. They're not in poverty by any means, but probably paycheck to paycheck, right? And so once you get into that $3, $4, $5 an hour, you start to you can scale it, right? That means they're making equivalency of 50,000 a year, 75,000 a year. And so we've really done a lot of research to make sure that our people are being paid well and that they can grow within the company. And they're not, we're not just trying to get anybody for the cheapest labor by any means.
Yeah. Well, that's just a really that's a really nice way to think about it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so the one of the ways that you can that you look for dollar to dollar from country to country. There's a thing called
Yeah.
Big Mac theory,
Yeah.
and you look at the price of a Big Mac in different places.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work, because sometimes you'll come across a Big Mac that's super expensive.
Yeah.
But that's another way to look at it and think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I've learned a lot about economy differences because new cars in the Philippines cost more than new cars in the United States,
Really?
which is insane. It's insane. There are certain things like once I was trying to buy my team MacBooks and I was like, wait, why does a MacBook cost more in your country than it does here? Like you're manufacturing, you're closer to China. Like I'm thinking of all these things, like what's going on here? But there's just some weird things where you don't even realize that certain things cost way more than it even does here. But now obviously the living as a whole, is obviously much cheaper. But there's been some really interesting things to learn about. And, for us, we've always done what we call self-sourcing. So a lot of times what companies will do is they'll hire a VA and then they will sublease them to you, subcontract them to you, right? And so like a big corporation will go over there, they'll hire them for $2 to $3 an hour, and then they'll charge you 8 or 9. Like you see these companies everywhere. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as they're taking care of the VAs properly on the back end. The problem is you pay a big upcharge / gap, and you're paying them for their expertise, their knowledge, things like that. But you don't really have any control over your VA, what they make, what they don't make. Like you're kind of at the mercy of what the company wants to pay that VA. You just got to pay the company. And so for us, we actually help people go and find a VA directly. So that way, if you want to pay them $6 an hour, you can. You don't have to go through a company and get their permission or pay bonuses. So that kind of gives us a lot more flexibility because that person really comes onto my team and they're a part of our company rather than, hey, you work for XYZ big VA company and we placed you randomly with someone in the United States. because now you kind of have like three parties to the employmentship, which obviously can cause, it's not problems, but it can make things a little harder for you to make sure that that VA is being taken care of in the proper way.
Wow. So does your company, like, do you guarantee that a VA is going to be a good fit? Do you help the person,
Yeah.
do you help the company find another one if it's not a good fit? Or
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of consider ourselves more of like a headhunter recruiter type position, where we have a recruitment team. So I have 14 recruiters in the Philippines that work full time for us, and their job is when someone comes to me, it can be anything. You literally come to me and go, Justin, this is what I need in my business. Our recruiters will go out and find the right people, the right talent. Now, it's not a perfect match every single time, right? Because if we were, I would be a billionaire figuring out the recruiting process and hiring process to make 100% matches. I am not a perfect matchmaker. We do have a 91% rate of success in that. However, we do have guarantees. So, if someone goes 2 months in, they're like, Justin, we love the services, but the VA is not quite performing to where we go. We have a no questions asked replacement policy. They come back to us, we will replace that VA right away, no questions asked, and we're off and running.